Pretty hard question to answer because anything I can tell you, I mean, if I say yes, it sounds like I'm bragging. If I say no, I'm lying.
After 47 years of silence, Elvis Presley's inner circle is finally breaking their vow of secrecy. The bodyguards, maids, musicians, and family members who witnessed his final years at Graceland are now revealing earth-shattering secrets as they face their own mortality. These aren't tabloid rumors, they're deathbed confessions from people who lived with Elvis daily. Red West, his childhood friend and bodyguard, shared secrets before dying in 2017. Sonny West, his cousin and security chief, did the same in 2020. Even Priscilla has begun dropping hints that there's more to Elvis's story than the public knows. The Presley estate has desperately fought to bury these revelations through lawsuits, hush money, and threats, protecting Elvis's carefully crafted image as America's innocent rock and roll king. But dying witnesses decided the truth mattered more than their promises of silence. These documented confessions reveal that Elvis's supposed protectors were actually his enablers and exploiters. The people closest to him, those fans trusted most, were orchestrating the biggest cover-up in music history. What's emerging will fundamentally change how the world sees not just Elvis, but everyone who surrounded and ultimately failed the king of rock and roll. Secret number one is going to destroy everything you thought you knew about Elvis Presley's relationship with his own father. And I'm warning you right now, what Vernon Presley was doing behind closed doors makes him one of the most despicable fathers in music history. But before we get there, you need to understand something. The 10 secrets you're about to hear aren't tabloid rumors. They're deathbed confessions from the people who were actually there. Red West, Elvis's bodyguard, confided these details before he died in 2017. Sonny West did the same in 2020. Even some family members, knowing their time was up, finally decided the truth mattered more than protecting a lie. The Presley estate has spent millions trying to bury these revelations. They've threatened lawsuits, paid hush money, and silenced witnesses for 47 years. But here's the thing about secrets. When the people carrying them start dying, the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface. So let's start with secret number one, because it sets the stage for everything that comes after. Vernon Presley wasn't just Elvis's father, he was his financial parasite. While Elvis was working himself to death performing, Vernon was systematically stealing from his own son in ways that would make your blood boil. Here's what the inner circle finally revealed. Vernon had been forging Elvis's signature on checks for years. Not small amounts, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money that Elvis thought was going to charity, to family members in need, to investments for his future. Instead, Vernon was funneling it into secret bank accounts that Elvis never knew existed. But it gets worse. Vernon was also selling Elvis's personal belongings behind his back. Guitars, jewelry, even clothes Elvis had worn on stage. He'd wait until Elvis was on tour, then quietly auction off pieces of his son's life to private collectors. When Elvis would ask about missing items, Vernon would lie straight to his face, claiming they'd been lost or stolen. The most disgusting part, Vernon was using Elvis's generosity against him. Elvis was famous for giving away cars, houses, jewelry to friends and strangers alike. It was part of his nature. He couldn't stand to see people struggle when he had so much. But Vernon would intercept these gifts before they reached their intended recipients and sell them instead. People Elvis thought he was helping never received a thing, while Vernon pocketed the cash. Red West confirmed this in his final interview before he died. He said he'd watched Vernon manipulate Elvis for years, always with some sob story about needing money for this or that emergency. And Elvis, being the loyal son he was, would hand over whatever Vernon asked for without question. He trusted his father completely, even as Vernon was bleeding him dry. Here's the kicker. Vernon wasn't just stealing money, he was stealing Elvis's peace of mind. Every time Elvis felt generous, Every time he wanted to help someone, Vernon was there, turning that kindness into profit. Elvis died thinking he was a good person who helped people. He never knew that most of his attempts at generosity were being stolen by the one person he trusted most. This wasn't just theft, it was the systematic destruction of Elvis's soul by his own father. And it explains so much about why Elvis became increasingly paranoid and isolated in his final years. Deep down, he sensed something was wrong, but he could never imagine that his own father was the one betraying him. But Vernon's financial manipulation was just the beginning, because secret number 2 reveals how Elvis's prescription drug addiction wasn't an accident. It was orchestrated by people who were supposed to protect him. And when you hear the names of the people involved and how much money they were making off Elvis's suffering, you're going to be absolutely furious. Secret number 2 gets even darker, and it explains how Elvis became so dependent on prescription drugs. It wasn't just one doctor. It wasn't just Dr. Nick. Elvis had an entire network of physicians across 3 states who were writing him prescriptions, and they were all being coordinated by someone you trusted. Joe Esposito, Elvis's road manager and supposed best friend, was running what amounted to a pharmaceutical operation. He had connections with doctors in Memphis, Nashville, and Las Vegas. When one doctor would cut Elvis off, Joe would drive him to another state to see a different physician. When that doctor got suspicious, they'd fly to Las Vegas.
But Joe wasn't doing this out of loyalty. He was taking a cut. Every prescription filled, Joe got paid by the pharmaceutical companies for volume referrals. He turned Elvis's addiction into his own personal business. And when Elvis would try to get clean, Joe would convince him that he needed the pills for his performances, for his back pain, for his anxiety. Joe Esposito made over $400,000 between 1974 and 1977, just from kickbacks on Elvis's prescriptions. Secret number 3 is going to change everything you thought you knew about what was happening at Graceland during those final years. Elvis wasn't just taking pills and eating sandwiches. He was completely obsessed with the paranormal, and he was holding seances in the basement of Graceland almost every week. Larry Geller, Elvis's spiritual advisor, has finally admitted that Elvis was trying to communicate with his dead twin brother Jesse. But it wasn't just innocent curiosity. Elvis genuinely believed that Jesse was trying to warn him about something. He would spend hours in the basement with candles, Ouija boards, and mediums he flew in from all over the country. And here's what makes this terrifying. Elvis started making decisions based on what he thought Jesse was telling him, who to trust, who to fire, even what songs to record. The people around him thought he was losing his mind, but they played along because the alternative was losing access to his money. Priscilla knew about the seances. She participated in some of them, but she's never admitted publicly that Elvis's final years were being guided by what he believed were messages from his dead brother. Secret number 4 is the most explosive of all, because it involves evidence that still exists today. Elvis was secretly recording conversations at Graceland, and those tapes are still out there. Starting in 1975, Elvis had recording equipment installed throughout Graceland, not just in his bedroom, but in the kitchen, the living room, even the office where Vernon handled his finances. Elvis was paranoid that people were plotting against him, and he was right. Those tapes captured everything. Vernon and Colonel Parker discussing how to hide money from Elvis, Joe Esposito on the phone with drug dealers, Priscilla talking to her divorce attorney about how to maximize her settlement. But the most damaging conversations involved Elvis himself. Him admitting that he knew people were stealing from him, but feeling too weak to stop it. Him talking about ending his life because he couldn't trust anyone. Him begging people to help him get clean while they're literally handing him pills. 3 of those tapes were turned over to Priscilla after Elvis died. She's had them for 47 years. The other 12 tapes? They're still hidden somewhere in Graceland, and whoever finds them is going to have the power to destroy multiple reputations. But if you think secrets 1 through 4 are shocking, wait until you hear what the people you trusted most were doing behind Elvis's back. Secret number 5 is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about loyalty, because it involves someone who pretended to be Elvis's friend while secretly planning to destroy him. James Burton, Elvis's lead guitarist, and someone the world saw as devoted to the king, was writing a tell-all book throughout the entire 1970s. But he wasn't just writing it. He was actively recording conversations with Elvis without his knowledge. Burton had a small recording device that he would hide in his guitar case during rehearsals, in hotel rooms, even during private conversations at Graceland. The book was going to be called The Real King, and it was going to expose everything. Elvis's drug use, his violent outbursts, his sexual relationships, even his financial problems. Burton had a deal with a major publisher worth over $300,000, which was massive money in 1976. He was planning to release it the moment Elvis died, or if their professional relationship ended. But here's the most disgusting part. Burton would encourage Elvis to open up about his problems, pretending to be a supportive friend, all while recording every word for his book. When Elvis would talk about his fears, his insecurities, his family problems, Burton saw dollar signs. The manuscript still exists, and it's filled with Elvis's most private confessions, recorded without his knowledge by someone he trusted completely. Secret number 6 explains why Priscilla really left Elvis, and it has nothing to do with the official story you've been told about growing apart or his infidelity. The truth is far more disturbing. On March 12, 1972, Elvis physically attacked Priscilla during an argument about money. Not a push, not a shove. He beat her so badly that she had to be taken to a private doctor to avoid questions. The incident was witnessed by 3 people: Charlie Hodge, Sonny West, and Elvis's cousin Billy Smith. All 3 were paid to keep quiet, but that wasn't the worst part. The attack happened in front of Lisa Marie, who was only 4 years old at the time. Priscilla later told her divorce attorney that Lisa Marie still had nightmares about seeing her father hurt her mother. That's why Priscilla fought so hard for custody, not because of Elvis's lifestyle, but because she genuinely feared for her daughter's safety. The 3 witnesses were each paid $25,000 to never speak about what they saw. But Sonny West, before his death, finally admitted to his own family what really happened that night. He said it was the most shameful thing he'd ever been part of, not just witnessing the attack, but taking money to cover it up.
Secret number 7 reveals the true extent of Colonel Parker's theft, and the numbers are going to make you sick. Everyone knows Parker was taking 50% of Elvis's earnings, but that was just the beginning. Parker had secret agreements with venues where he would get additional kickbacks for booking Elvis. He was getting paid by the hotels in Las Vegas, by the television networks, even by the pharmaceutical companies that were supplying Elvis's drugs. Between 1970 and 1977, Parker made over $8 million from deals that Elvis knew nothing about. But the most disgusting scheme involved Elvis's merchandise. Parker set up a separate company that owned the rights to Elvis's image and likeness. Every t-shirt, every poster, every piece of memorabilia sold, Parker was getting 70%, while Elvis got 30%. Elvis thought he owned his own image, but legally, Parker controlled it all. When Elvis tried to fire Parker in 1976, Parker showed him the contracts and explained that if Elvis left, he would owe Parker over $4 million in penalties. Elvis was trapped by his own manager, financially imprisoned by the man who was supposed to protect his interests. Secret number 8 is the most terrifying of all because it involves death threats that Elvis received in his final year, and the person making those threats was someone inside his own organization. Between January and July 1977, Elvis received 12 death threats. The FBI investigated, but they never found the source. That's because the person making the threats had access to Graceland, knew Elvis's schedule, and was using inside information to make the threats seem credible. The person sending those threats was Dr. George Nicopolis, Dr. Nick himself. He was threatening Elvis's life as a way to make him more dependent on medication for anxiety and paranoia. Every time Elvis would try to reduce his pill intake, another death threat would arrive, sending him spiraling back into fear and drug dependence. But the final two secrets are so explosive, they involve evidence that was destroyed and cover-ups that went all the way to the top of law enforcement. Secret number 9 is going to haunt you because it involves Elvis's final phone call, and what he said changes everything about how he died. At 11:47 p.m. on August 15, 1977, less than 14 hours before he was found dead, Elvis made a phone call. The official story is that he called his dentist about a tooth problem. That's a lie. Elvis called his spiritual advisor, Larry Geller, and the conversation lasted 43 minutes.
Larry kept quiet about this call for over 30 years. But in 2008, dying of cancer, he finally revealed what Elvis said that night. Elvis told Larry that he couldn't take it anymore. The betrayals, the stealing, the people around him who pretended to love him while destroying him. He was done. But most importantly, Elvis said he had figured out a way to make it look natural so that Lisa Marie would never have to know the truth. Elvis spent that final phone call explaining to Larry that he had been stockpiling pills for months, not to get high, but to have enough to end his life in a way that would look like an accidental overdose. He said he couldn't bear the thought of Lisa Marie growing up knowing her father committed suicide. So, he was going to make it appear like he just took too many pills by mistake. Larry begged Elvis not to do it. He stayed on the phone until almost 1 a.m., trying to talk him out of it. But Elvis's final words to Larry were, "I've already made my peace with God. Tell Lisa Marie I love her when she's old enough to understand." The phone records from that night were confiscated by Memphis police within hours of Elvis's death. They've never been released. Larry's testimony was never taken officially. And when Larry tried to tell investigators about the call, he was told to keep quiet for the family's sake. But secret number 10 is the most devastating of all, because it reveals a cover-up so massive that it involved destroying evidence and silencing witnesses to protect not just Elvis's reputation, but the reputations of everyone who failed him. Within 6 hours of Elvis being declared dead, Colonel Parker arrived at Graceland with 2 Memphis police detectives and began removing evidence from the scene. They weren't looking for clues about how Elvis died. They were destroying anything that could expose the network of people who had been enabling his drug use and stealing from him. The most shocking part is what they found in Elvis's bedroom safe. A suicide note, written in Elvis's handwriting, dated August 15, 1977. But now you know the truth, all of it. And once you know the truth about Elvis Presley, you can never see his story the same way again. If these revelations shocked you, hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started. Next week, we're exposing the dark secrets behind Michael Jackson's final days that his family never wanted revealed. Ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next.